Hi, I'm Bill Bradley. Join me for a recent excerpt of American Voices. Here on American Voices, we celebrate all that this country has to offer. So after hearing about people's life stories, we also want to celebrate the land. So each week, we invite authors and artists to talk about a favorite place in the country. This time, Dorothy Berry is here. She's the Digital Collections Program Manager at Houghton Library at Harvard University. Here's Dorothy Berry on her favorite place.
My name is Dorothy Berry, and my favorite place in America is the F.W. Olin Library on the Mills College campus in Oakland, California. When you come onto the campus for Mills College, it's a beautiful oasis in the middle of a city. Oakland is a beautiful city, but the campus is a whole other world. When you get to the front of the entry drive, one of the first buildings you see is the library. It's sort of inconspicuous from the front and from the outside. Low-slung white California architecture, 2 stories. But when you come inside, one entire wall of the library, first and second floor, is glass windows. And you look outside and you see beautiful eucalyptus trees and other greenage, and it's as if you're doing all of your studies in a forest. I think the beauty of that library and the calmness, because even though there is such a beautiful view of all these trees, there's so much natural lighting that it feels more relaxing than distracting. So I went to Mills as a music major, and a music performance major doing vocal music. And I studied Western classical music for years beforehand, and that's what I focused on. My favorite spot was always the music section. So there's on the second floor, you go to the top of the stairs, and you would go directly in front of where the stairs ended, so that's on your left, to where sheet music was shelved. And it was always fascinating to me because I always wanted to find something that I could bring to my teachers to say I wanted to perform that nobody expected anyone to perform, or that nobody had done before recently in my mind. And so I would go and I would just look through the stacks and pull out random things. That same first year, I looked up things for my voice type, and I found sheet music by Ruth Crawford Seeger, the mother of Pete Seeger. And I said, I'm going to perform this. And I pulled it out, not realizing that it was kind of impossibly hard, humorously so, in retrospect. But I just loved being able to explore those spaces and sort of feeling like I had control over what I could do in them. And then as I eventually became a student worker in that library, I became the go-to person to pull from the sheet music section. Because since Mills was an experimental music center, some of the sheet music was very confusing in its format or very hard to handle. We had Stockhausen scores that were the size of a coffee table. At that point, it was a new thing for me to have this ability to just pick what I wanted, learn what I wanted, and feel like I had control over the space, and also the freedom of serendipity that you don't get as much when something's part of your regular job. When I was a student worker, people would return books and I'd have to check them back in. And in those moments, maybe I found a new book to read that I never would have thought of. Or I worked checking IDs at the front door of the library, student IDs. And in that, when you did that job, you could read books. And I read whole entire books over the course of a couple of shifts. And those books, because of the time for me and that space, were often really formative. Recently, it was announced that Mills College is going to be closing down, which is somewhat heartbreaking on a few levels. And then for me, on the personal level, that's where I went to school. That library is the place that sparked my entire career, which is a big part of my life. And I received, text messages from people I haven't spoken to in 10 years saying, did you hear that Mills is closing? Because there are things that could happen, especially in that music program, which for me, because of my love of that type of research, that is connected strongly in my mind to the library. But that type of program doesn't really exist elsewhere. And the history of music on that campus and of research on that campus isn't really replicable anywhere else. especially not on the West Coast. So even thinking of the other students I worked with at the library, Mills College was over 50% students of color. I think at the time I was there, 50% or more sort of students that didn't identify as heterosexual. So it was one of the most diverse places you can imagine, and that's really hard to replicate. Mills College closing down seems, I guess it's sort of the cliche, but seems like the end of an era. And then in the music department, you can't even, the things I was allowed to do in that music department in terms of things I could perform or experiences I could have truly would not be allowed at other places. It doesn't fit the curriculum. And there's just these freedoms and ways of becoming self that I have clear memories, both for me and for people I went to school with, really freeing themselves to explore who they were. And there won't be that opportunity anymore. And that's really sad. So the library was a really big part of me growing as a musician, of me seeing what was important to me. I mean, I remember my senior year, I won an award for some best undergraduate senior music major. And I didn't go to the award ceremony because I picked up extra library shift instead. And people came into the library and were like, Dorothy, you missed your whole thing. So a lot of sort of important events like that happened around the library for me. It was a huge part in shaping my career and also in providing me access to the resources I needed to grow. I think there's a really strong end of an era feeling about it because I've realized in the future, if I talk to, a young person about going to Mills College, I'll have to reference it as a place that doesn't exist anymore. And that feels really strange to me that I couldn't recommend someone go to that college, or I couldn't say, oh, they have this amazing music festival every year. And it is strange and makes it feel like the closing, I guess to be cliche, the closing of a book. Because when you think about memories of college or the sort of formative years, they're in the past, but you don't think you couldn't go back. I've had reoccurring dreams over my life about I have to go back to school for some reason. And sometimes it's I have to go back to Mills because I'm getting a different type of music degree now. I'm doing something else. I'm getting a graduate degree at Mills. And then, you have whatever dream adventures you have on campus. And even though those were always dreams, you wake up and it's something that could happen. And at this point, if I have a dream like that again in the future, it will truly only be a dream. I think it's a really clear sign of you can never go back.
That was Dorothy Berry on her favorite place. She's the Digital Collections Program Manager at Houghton Library at Harvard University. Thank you for listening to American Voices here on my YouTube channel. For more interviews celebrating the goodness and creativity of the American people, click the subscribe button below.